Doesn't feel like he has the full story on this quite yet. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina joins us. He's on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Nice to have you on set in person.
Glad to be with
Graham.
you. Thank you for having me.
Going to what Senator McCain made, some of the points that he just made as criticism of the administration, how do you think the way that this entire situation has been handled is affecting our national security? What's the bigger picture behind this one event?
The bigger picture is we cannot live as a nation with radical Islam reigning in the Mideast. They have an agenda that will take the world into darkness, and we need to pick sides. There's a struggle in Libya and throughout the Mideast between radical Islamists who would take the world back into darkness, who, put women in soccer stadiums and kill them for sport, and people who could live in peace with us, where we could trade and create jobs and travel throughout the world in peace. So it does matter that the radical Islamists who are trying to undercut democracy in Libya and drive us out of the region are defeated. And the Obama administration is being overwhelmed by predictable events.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when Gaddafi falls, it's predictable that the radical Islamists will try to fill in the vacuum. You had 30,000 people take to the streets to mourn Chris Stevens. I've been to Libya. Most people in Libya want to live in peace with us and have prosperity. The Islamists got 10% at the ballot box in the last vote in Libya, but now they've taken to bullets, not the ballot box. It was predictable they would try to undermine this government. It was predictable they would attack American interest, and clearly the Obama administration has had a hands-off approach when it comes to Libya.
You were fairly optimistic, though, when you were there
I'm still optimistic.
February. So what do you think the message...
If we had a president who understood the Arab Spring, and we don't.
Well, what do you think on this one event, what do you think the message is being sent to the Islamists that you mentioned, whether they're militants, terrorists, extremists, whatever we want to characterize them at? What is the message being sent right now in our response thus far to the murder of our ambassador?
They're emboldened. Our enemies are emboldened and our friends are afraid. The FBI is on the ground in Libya, fine, but if we treat these guys as common criminals, the al-Qaeda elements that attacked our consulate and killed our American citizens...
And you're comfortable calling them al-Qaeda elements?
Well, that's what Secretary of State said, that there was an al-Qaeda connection to al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, but whatever you want to call them, they're radical extremists who killed innocent Americans and are trying to undermine the Libyan people. They should be held as enemy combatants, not common criminals, and sent to Gitmo if we catch them.
So what does that mean? Right now we're waiting for the FBI to get into Benghazi. We're being told that the security situation is not secure enough for them to go in, and there's something about that that doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, we're the most powerful nation in the world, but yet the FBI can't go into Benghazi. Why?
When Gaddafi fell, the militias are providing security throughout the country, throughout different regions of the country. There is no strong central Libyan army. John McCain and I went to Libya months ago, and we came back and said, listen, spend all your time and attention of building a national army to replace these militias, defang these militias. So you had a situation in Benghazi where there was no police force or national army, and the militias filling in the vacuum. So our number one goal should be to try to create a national army in Libya to bring about security. And the fact that our embassy was exposed should have been no surprise. It was attacked in the past, and it was a prime target for terrorists to come after, and we had almost no security there.
Why do you think the president and his administration would purposely mislead you or the American people about what happened in Benghazi?
Well, it's one of two things. They're incredibly incompetent in their initial reaction to what happened.
What should the initial reaction have been?
The initial reaction should have been not to tell the world this was a spontaneous riot mimicking Egypt, because it was an explanation that doesn't bear truth. And when you say it was a spontaneous riot based on a video, you lose some culpability. The fact of the matter was it was a planned terrorist attack, probably a long time in the making, at least days or weeks in the making, to be predicted. Because once Gaddafi is replaced by a new group of people who don't have the capacity to provide security, if we lead from behind, you're going to have more of this. So it was very predictable the Islamic radicals in Libya would resort to violence. So we should have more security in Benghazi, a very predictable place for these people to attack. But the difference between a planned terrorist attack and a spontaneous riot is night and day. One can be planned for, the other you're kind of overwhelmed by.
4 Americans are dead in Libya.
Right.
I don't want to, to not put emphasis on that. Our ambassador is dead. It was murdered by these people. It's been the first time in 30 years we've seen this.
Great friend of the Libyan people.
But also 18 Americans have been murdered in Afghanistan. and we have 68,000 troops there now. This is an entire foreign policy discussion that we continue to have to define our enemies and to really know who we're facing and how to win. Why are we still having this discussion? Why is this so difficult to do?
The biggest nightmare of the Taliban is for us to not leave the region, to have a partnership with the Afghan people past 2014. My hope is that we will draw most of our troops in 2014, leave 15 or 20,000 behind that can aid the Afghan army to make sure that there's never a chance for the Taliban to take the country over militarily. They know that. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to break this partnership apart, the Taliban.
So would you take any of those troops and put them in Libya and tell them to go after these people that murdered our ambassador?
I would work with the Libyan government and the Libyan people to have a joint operation to go after the terrorists. In Afghanistan, I would tell the Taliban, you will never come back in power through the use of force. We'll never let this place become a safe haven for terrorists. We're going to withdraw our troops substantially, but we're going to leave a follow-on force behind. And your days of hoping to take this country over are over. And those who are brave enough to help us will feel emboldened, and those who want to drive us out of the region will feel deterred. And the Obama administration only talks about leaving. We'll be judged not by the day we left Afghanistan, but by what we left behind. I am optimistic that General Allen has the right plan, but the enemy gets a vote. They're trying to drive us out of the region. They're trying to undercut this new way of doing business in the Mideast. And why does it matter to us? If they win, we'll never know a minute's peace.
Are we less safe today?
We're far less safe. Killing bin Laden has not changed the strategic dynamic at all. Is anybody afraid to attack America after we kill bin Laden? This president has no vision of the Arab Spring. He has a hands-off, leading from behind approach. He only wants to talk about Afghanistan in terms of domestic politics. I want us to come home, but more than anything else, I want us to come home based on sound military advice, not polls. It was never the military's recommendation to pull all the surge troops out this October. Guess what? It's a month before our election. It was never the military's recommendation to announce withdrawal at the same time you announced the surge. So this President Obama, has looked at Afghanistan from a domestic point of view rather than a strategic point of view, well, and we're paying a price.
Although all these countries, and we recognize them, are different, we all like to talk about the foreign policy overall. It's a big subject, and Senator Graham, always nice to have you here to talk to us about it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greg?